must have a right to end their own lives if they so choose. This is a contentious issue in Canadian politics right now, and the National Post is noting that an overwhelming majority of Canadians are opposed to this practice, at least as far as it relates to someone wanting to kill themselves strictly for reasons of psychological suffering. So that is what the National Post thinks is the most important stories of the day. We will now look at the Globe and Mail and see what they say. So the banner headline on the Globe and Mail is "Clark promises fundraising transparency." So a few of the Canadian provinces are having a bit of a scandal relating to bot access among politicians, influence peddling and that sort of thing, in the sense that there has been a number of high-profile revelations in which politicians have been holding these lavish fundraisers in which you basically are buying access to have private time with a politician and basically one-on-one lobbying. Canada has very strict rules regarding the funding of political parties at a national level, but at a provincial level, it's often sort of the law of the jungle. They still often have very little regulation in terms of how much money you can give to politicians and some of this sort of stuff in terms of how transactional the fundraising versus access can be. Clark, in this headline, is the Prime Minister of British Columbia, the Premier of British Columbia, as we say in Canada, my home province. She has been in some hot water lately because, as the story notes, the Globe and Mail has chronicled how her BC Liberal Party has stepped up its fundraising efforts for the 2017 election campaign through small private gatherings with the Premier at a cost of as much as $20,000 a plate. As the headline notes, Premier Clark is stopping short of saying that corporate and union donations should be banned from British Columbia politics altogether, as they are banned in the national level in Canada, but she is promising greater transparency and more checks and balances. So then we also have the Prince Edward Island abortion story. PEI relents with plan to provide abortion access by year's end. We have another sports story, though not about hockey. US women make legal pitch for their fair share. And this is that story that you might have heard of that is making news internationally about how the 5 veteran stars of the US women's national soccer team have filed a lawsuit alleging wage discrimination on the basis of gender. Then we have Syrian resettlement. Ottawa move makes refugee sponsors hurry up and wait. This is a story involving some of the bureaucratic hurdles that Ottawa is placing on the private individuals that wish to sponsor Syrian refugees. Canada has, of course, let in a great deal of Syrian refugees, but the Trudeau administration has promised to let in a great deal more. It says here that we are planning to accept 10,500 more private sponsorship applications before the end of this year. Then we have an international story. The Globe and Mail likes to do international stories because, as I said, they sort of like to think of themselves as this globally relevant paper. And this involves something about the president of South Africa, who has apparently been found guilty of violating the Constitution, which puts his political future in doubt. Is this of much interest to Canadians? I don't really know, but it is of interest to the Globe and Mail's brand, which likes to demonstrate that it understands sort of intricate overseas political maneuvering. Here we go. We have a charming political cartoon in the National Post opinion section, where we have Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister, leaning on a table, and then it says, "Meanwhile, at the Nuclear Safety Summit, thank you for sharing your position with us, Prime Minister Trudeau," says Obama. And this is a reference to the fact that Justin Trudeau was recently photographed sort of doing, I don't know, whatever that is, some sort of weird yoga stand on the table. The hard-hitting political satire is that maybe Prime Minister Trudeau doesn't take things as seriously as he should. And we have an editorial cartoon here as well. It is the Foreign Minister of Canada, Stéphane Dion. He is playing Twister, which is labeled Justification Game. And then there's also a little piece of paper here that says Saudi arms deal. The Canadian federal government has recently authorized the sale of some military hardware to the Saudi government. And this is, of course, somewhat at odds with their human rights first sort of pretenses of Canadian foreign policy. And the idea is that the foreign minister has not offered a good justification. In fact, you could say he's playing games with international diplomacy. So take that, Minister Dion. So that is basically what Canada's newspapers are like. You need a little bit of literacy with Canadian politics and Canadian current events to understand a lot of them, particularly the opinion sections, but I would say all things considered, they're clear and well written and generally easy to follow. even if you are not a native-born Canadian like myself. Hopefully this has been an educational experience for you. If there is anything else in particular that you would like to learn more about as it relates to Canada and Canadian culture and Canadian politics, please let me know in the comments and I'll think about it for my next video. If you're still interested in learning more about Canada, I suggest checking out some of my other Canadian explainer videos, which I will link to below. And as usual, don't forget to like and subscribe.